When my family told me to forgive my best friend for sleeping with my fiancée, and to call it a mistake made in weakness, told them I needed time to think, and then spent the next 8 months quietly dismantling every invisible pillar I had built beneath all of their lives. I had been away for 11 days. A commercial project in Prince George. A new medical center wing, wrapped ahead of schedule. My site supervisor called on a Wednesday afternoon to say the structural inspections had passed, the municipality had signed off, and there was no reason to stay through the weekend. My regional director told me to take the extra days. I thought about staying. I knew a decent trail system outside the city, and the idea of 3 days of genuine solitude was appealing, but I hadn't seen my fiancée in 2 weeks. That specific ache, the one that had nothing to do with loneliness, and everything to do with her, won out. I caught the last WestJet flight back to Vancouver and landed just after 10:30. I didn't text ahead. I wanted it to be a surprise. On the drive from YVR, I stopped at a 24-hour grocery store near our condo in Mount Pleasant. I bought a small box of butter tarts from the bakery section. My fiancée had a ritual about butter tarts. She had a firm and completely sincere conviction that the ones in the plastic supermarket clamshell were superior to anything from a proper patisserie. And she defended this position with total seriousness every time we walked past a bakery. I stood in the fluorescent aisle and genuinely smiled thinking about it. I parked in the underground and took the elevator to the 9th floor. I unlocked the door as quietly as I could. The living room was dark. Her laptop was closed on the coffee table. The TV was off. I assumed she had gone to bed early. She had mentioned a branding deadline that week. Then I heard laughter from the bedroom. 2 voices. I recognized the second one immediately. My best friend and I had known each other since grade 6 in Burnaby. 11 years of friendship as adults. He had been at my university convocation. He was the first person I called the night I got engaged. I had spent 3 years building his small residential contracting business. Through referrals and introductions. He was the kind of person you simply cannot imagine not being in your life. I stood in the hallway. I didn't move. Some part of my brain was constructing alternative explanations as fast as it could. They were watching a video on her phone. There was some obvious and reasonable context to this. I was about to feel embarrassed for the spike of adrenaline hitting my bloodstream. I walked to the bedroom door. I opened it. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there and looked. What I noticed first was my grandfather's watch. A 1971 Omega Seamaster. The one my father had given me when I turned 25. I had lent it to her 3 months earlier when she wanted to wear it to a friend's wedding, and I had never gotten around to asking for it back. She was wearing it now. In my bed, with my best friend. She said my name. Sack. I raised one hand, palm out. I didn't raise my voice, I just held it there. She stopped talking. He tried to say something. I looked at him. This person I had vouched for, helped, referred clients to, thought of as family, and whatever was forming in his throat died. I went to the closet. I pulled out my large duffel, the one I took on longer site deployments. I started packing. She followed me, sheet wrapped around her, one trembling hand reaching for my arm. Don't, she said. Just let me explain. I moved around her as if she were a piece of furniture. I took my laptop and charger. I opened the small fireproof safe on the shelf and emptied it into a zippered pouch. Passport, SIN card, birth certificate, insurance documents. I took 3 changes of clothes, whatever was closest. I went to the bathroom and collected my toiletry kit. Without looking at the second toothbrush in the holder. My best friend had come to the doorway, dressed now, arms open in the gesture of a man who has run completely out of words. Just say something, he said. Yell at me. Do something. I looked at him. Don't, I said. That was the only word I said inside that apartment. I was out the door in 18 minutes. I drove to an extended stay hotel near the Cambie Bridge, checked in, went up to the room and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't cry. I didn't put a hole in the wall. I didn't call anyone. My phone was vibrating steadily on the nightstand. I flipped the mute switch and watched the screen light up over and over. Her name, his name, her name again. At 2 a.m, I opened my laptop. I didn't write in a journal. I opened Excel. I created a new file and named it disassembly.dexless. And I began making a very specific list. My mother called at 8:15 the next morning. Her voice was already wet with tears. My best friend had called them the previous night. He had told them everything. He feels absolutely terrible, she said. He's been sick with guilt. You know how much he loves you. Both of you. He made a terrible mistake, sweet. But he's still the boy who used to sleep on our couch every other weekend for years. He's your best friend. I hear you, I said. That was enough. She took it as an opening and kept going for 9 full minutes. The sanctity of long friendship, The complexity of human emotion. The importance of not making permanent decisions in moments of acute pain. Real loyalty, she said, means weathering the ugliest moments. Your father wants to have everyone over for dinner this weekend, she said at the end. Just family. We can sit down and actually talk through this. I'll think about it, I said. She sounded genuinely relieved. She thought she was bringing me around. I was not thinking about the weekend dinner. My sister was the next to reach out, 4 years older, living in North Vancouver with her husband, constitutionally incapable of pretending. She texted first I heard. I'm so sorry, where are you? Are you okay? She was the only person in my family I trusted completely. I also knew her role in the family. She was the peacemaker. She would be genuinely horrified by what my best friend had done. And still show up to Sunday dinner because someone had to hold things together. That good instinct made her, in this specific situation, very useful to me. I'm fine. I'm safe. Can you do me a favor? Can you keep me posted on what's happening at Mum and Dad's? Of course, she replied. Always, I love you. I had my informant. 2 weeks later, I was in Toronto. The corporate transfer moved quickly because I had been quietly flagging interest in the Ontario division for the better part of a year. My director made it official in 3 days. I found a furnished condo in the Distillery District online, signed the lease remotely, and was on a Porter flight out of YVR before my best friend had stopped leaving voicemails. The new apartment was on the 14th floor. Tall exposed brick walls. Windows that looked out over the lake. It was considerably more expensive than the Vancouver place. It was also entirely mine in a way the Vancouver place had stopped being. I bought new furniture. Nothing that matched the old apartment in texture, or weight or association. I found a new gym, a new Tim Hortons route, a new trail along the Don Valley for morning runs. I deactivated my social media accounts quietly. No announcements, no status changes, no explanation to anyone. Only my sister had my new address. In my Distillery District apartment, I built something else. I reopened disassembly.uplex.ls and began filling it in properly. The way I would map the load-bearing structure of a complex build. Every professional introduction I had made for my best friend's contracting business. Every client connection I had engineered for my fiancée's freelance design work. Every financial arrangement I had quietly maintained for my parents. When my best friend went independent 3 years earlier, he had no portfolio and no contacts. I made 6 personal phone calls to procurement leads and project managers at firms I worked with, and I vouched for him directly. Those calls produced his first 4 contracts. Those contracts gave him a track record. That track record gave him everything that followed. My fiancée's graphic design business had a similar foundation. Her 2 most important clients, a fintech startup and a regional marketing agency, had both come through me. I had introduced her at industry networking events, told people specifically that she was exceptional, and followed up to make sure the conversations went somewhere. She had real talent. But talent alone doesn't open doors. And then there were my parents. For 3 years, I had been quietly covering their membership fees at a private golf club in West Vancouver. $11,000 a year, run through my corporate expense account. Under a category I had labeled client entertainment. My mother's entire social life ran through that club. My father's consulting income was inconsistent, and their savings had taken a serious hit during a series of failed investment decisions he had made in his early 60s. I had also co-signed my mother's car lease. A 3-year agreement on a Lexus she drove everywhere. My name was on the contract, because her credit score hadn't qualified at the original rate. And there was the HELOC. My parents had taken out a $120,000 home equity line of credit on their home to renovate the kitchen and take 2 international trips. The bank had required a guarantor. I had signed. My income and credit profile had made it possible. I sat with the spreadsheet for a long time. Then I started coloring cells red. 3 months after Vancouver, my sister sent me a photo. It was from a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. My best friend was sitting at the table with his arm around my fiancée. My parents were smiling warmly. A bottle of wine was open. Everyone looked at ease. The particular ease of people who have resolved their cognitive dissonance and arrived somewhere they've decided to call peace. My sister's message said, they made it official tonight. Mum and Dad raised a toast. I feel sick sitting here, but someone has to. I love you. I enlarged the photo. My fiancée's wrist was bare. The watch had been returned at least. Small thing. I looked at my best friend's expression. He looked like a man who had convinced himself that what he did was complicated, rather than simple. And that the complexity justified it. The switch inside me went to a colder setting. I closed the photo and opened my contacts. I found the number for the director of procurement at a major developer I worked with regularly in Ontario. A man who had been in active discussions with my best friend's company about a substantial renovation contract in Kelowna. Listen, I said when he picked up, keeping my voice completely professional and unhurried. I've been reviewing some of the Vancouver contractor connections from my previous region. The outfit I had flagged before. I want to be straightforward with you. I've had some concerns about their capacity at this project scale. I've got another team in mind, with a considerably stronger track record and proper bonding. Can I put together an introduction before the tender closes? There was a pause. He was not a slow person. Absolutely, he said. Send it over. I went back to the spreadsheet and changed that cell from white to red. My fiancée's most important client was a fintech company I had personally connected her with 18 months earlier, through a university friend who sat on their executive team. The monthly retainer had been effectively paying her rent for over a year. I called my university friend in April. Completely off the record, I said, I want to introduce you to a UX designer who just relocated to Toronto from Montreal. Her portfolio is exceptional. She specializes in exactly the kind of fintech brand work you're expanding into. I've seen it. It's a genuine step up from your current work. Yeah, he sounded interested. Send it over. I sent it over with a personal recommendation. 6 weeks later, my sister. She's been crying a lot. Lost a major client, she said. Things are getting very tense between them. I sent a thumbs up. I colored another cell. The financial unraveling required more precision than the professional dismantling. Everything had to be legal, documented, and entirely attributable to natural process. In June, I logged into my corporate expense portal and removed the recurring authorization for the golf club fees. No message, no explanation. The charges simply stopped processing. In July, I contacted the dealership's finance department and formally submitted documentation requesting removal of my name as guarantor from my mother's lease. Under Canadian Consumer Protection Guidelines, a guarantor may request removal at term end with proper notice. I provided everything in writing, notarized. In August, my Toronto lawyer drafted the formal withdrawal of my guarantee on my parents' HELOC. Under the bank's terms, they were required to notify the account holders 90 days in advance, giving my parents time to either pay down the balance or refinance independently. The letter went by registered mail. I told no one. These things take time. Financial dominoes always do, but they fall. My sister's messages came like a calendar. The club sent a letter about outstanding dues. Mom called them in a panic. She thought it was an administrative error. They said the account hadn't been funded in 3 months. She's mortified. His contracting business lost 2 more jobs this week. He came to dinner looking terrible. Her and him got into an argument in the car on the way home. Dad pretended not to hear. The dealership called Dad about the lease. He doesn't understand why it's not renewing the same way. He's been on the phone with them for hours. I responded to each message the same way. Thanks for the update. Hope you and your husband are well. I was 2,000 miles away, watching a building come down floor by floor. The call came on a Tuesday evening in October. My mother. Her voice was different from the first time. Not crying, not performing. Just flat and exhausted in the way of someone who has been managing a slow emergency for months. We need to see you, she said. Dad and I and everyone, we're thinking a dinner, Saturday here at the house. Just family. There was shuffling on the line, then his voice. He used the nickname from when we were 12 years old. His voice was rough, thinned out. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but we've been like brothers since we were kids. Just give me 1 hour face to face. That's all I'm asking. I looked out at the lake from my window. Saturday at 6, I said. I'll be there. My mother exhaled. The sound of someone who thought the worst was behind them. She had no idea what Saturday was for. I flew first class. I stayed Friday night at a boutique hotel in Yaletown. I slept 8 uninterrupted hours. In the morning I went to the hotel gym, ran 6 kilometers, showered, and walked to a barber 2 blocks away for a proper cut. I dressed carefully. Dark slim fit trousers, a navy merino crewneck, clean boots, nothing loud. Just deliberate and quietly certain of itself. Before leaving the room, I checked my reflection for any trace of anxiety. There was none. I drove the rental to my parents' house in Burnaby and pulled in at 5:58. A text from my sister. Already here. It's tense. You okay? Fine. I wrote back. My mother opened the door before I knocked. The change in her was visible. Smaller somehow, her highlights, grown out. The maintained brightness she had always projected, replaced by something more brittle. She moved forward to embrace me. I let her. I kept my arms at my sides until she stepped back. My father stood from his chair and extended his hand. I shook it with the grip I used in boardrooms. My sister was near the kitchen doorway with her husband, who gave me a quiet nod. She looked exhausted in the way of someone who has been holding a fracture together with their bare hands. They were sitting on the far side of the table. Together my best friend had aged, hollowed out, the particular look of someone whose certainty has been slowly draining. My fiancée didn't look up when I came in. Her hands were folded in her lap. I took my seat at the end of the table, my chair, the one I had sat in since I was a child. My mother had made everything. Brisket, roasted potatoes, green beans with almonds. My favorite meal since I was 8 years old. The effort was so nakedly manipulative that it almost produced something in me. We ate. The conversation was brittle and performative. My father tried to comment about the Leafs. My sister asked about Toronto weather with visible effort. My best friend glanced at me every 30 seconds, like a man sitting next to something he couldn't quite predict. After 20 minutes, my father set down his fork. "All right," he said, with the voice he used for family announcements. "I think we all know why we're here. It's time to clear the air. You're my son. He's been like a son. We're all adults, and it's time to start acting like a family again." My mother came in immediately. "Caden, we know how much you've been hurt. We know this was devastating. But life is complicated, and people are complicated, and love doesn't always happen in a straight line. What matters now is how we move forward. Because you are so loved." She was crying quietly into her napkin. My best friend leaned forward, hands clasped. "I am more sorry than I have ever been about anything in my life. I know what I did was a betrayal. I think about it every single day. But I can't pretend that what happened wasn't real. I'm asking you, not to excuse it, just to give me the chance to be your friend again. Because my life doesn't make sense without you in it." My fiancée looked up for the first time. Her eyes were red. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said. "I hope someday you can find peace with this." The table went quiet. Every face turned toward me. I looked at each of them in turn. Then I reached for my water glass, took a slow sip, and set it down. "Are you finished?" I asked. "Caden." My father started. "I want to make sure everyone's had a chance," I said. My voice was completely flat. "Take your time." Silence. "Okay," I said. "Then let me tell you something." I turned to my best friend. He held my gaze with visible effort. "The Wainwright Project. The one that launched your business 3 years ago. You remember how that happened?" He nodded. Slowly. "I made 4 phone calls. The procurement lead, the site supervisor, the developer's regional rep, and the project manager's assistant who controls the tender queue. I put my professional reputation behind your name when your only credential was that you were my best friend. Every contract that came after, every single one, traced back to that chain." His face was draining of color. "The Douglas Street renovation. The North Burnaby multi-unit. The commercial fit-out in New Westminster." I listed them without hurrying. All of those happened because of introductions I made. I turned to my fiancée. She went very still. "Northvolt," I said. "My friend sat on their executive team. I called him personally and told him you were exceptional. He took my word for it. Their retainer paid your rent for over a year." I paused. Meridian Analytics, ClearPath Branding. Both of those introductions came through me. I vouched for you specifically, with people who trusted me. Her hands were shaking. 6 weeks ago, I said I introduced a better designer to Northvolt, someone I had no personal history with. Her work simply spoke for itself. I turned to my parents. My father's jaw was very tight. "The golf club," I said. "I've been covering the annual membership, through my corporate account for 3 years, $11,000 a year. I stopped the authorization in June." My mother made a sound, like she had been winded. "The Lexus. My name was on that lease as guarantor because the credit profile didn't qualify a loan. I submitted the removal paperwork in July." "Caden," my father said. "The HELOC," I said. "The $120,000. The bank approved it because I signed as guarantor. My lawyers submitted the formal withdrawal in August. The 90-day notice period ends in 3 weeks." Silence. The absolute kind. Then my father stood up. His chair scraped back hard. "This is a punishment. You are deliberately destroying this family because you can't accept that life didn't go the way you planned. Sit down," I said. He sat. "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm stopping. There's a difference." I looked around the table. All of you made choices. You chose to call a fundamental betrayal complicated when it wasn't. You built a narrative where I was the unreasonable one. I respected those choices. I just stopped subsidizing them. My best friend stood up, his chair knocking back. "You can't do this. I have employees. I have people depending on my business. Those contracts." "Read your agreements," I said. "Every referral I made was personal. I didn't contractually obligate anyone. They moved on because they found something better. You destroyed my business deliberately. You're not the person I grew up with. I looked at him for a long moment. I think you always recognized exactly who I was, I said. Which is precisely why you thought I'd absorb this. I stood up. I'm not angry at any of you, I said, speaking to the whole table. I'm done. Those are different things. You all decided I was expendable. I spent 8 months quietly agreeing. The only thing that's changed is that now you can feel it. He came around the table, panic taking over everything else. Please, I borrowed against those contracts. Real debt against work that's not coming in now. We can't. Cade, please. I know, I said. You knew this would happen. I knew exactly what I was doing, yes. He grabbed my arm, desperate, close to frantic. I looked down at his hand on my sleeve. Then I looked back at him. Let go, I said quietly. He held for another second. Then he released me and stepped back, his face a wreckage of everything he hadn't let himself feel for the past year. I straightened my sleeve. You treated me like infrastructure, I said. Something that would always be there, regardless of how you treated it. Now you get to find out what happens when the load-bearing wall decides to stop. I walked to the hallway. My mother was saying my name from the dining room. My father was shouting something about debt and consequences. My best friend was saying, please, in a way that had no shape left to it. My sister was standing at the edge of the kitchen doorway. She wasn't saying anything. She just looked at me. Heartbroken and completely clear-eyed at the same time. I stopped in front of her. You don't have to keep holding this together, I said quietly. There's nothing left to hold. She blinked hard. My guest room in Toronto, I said. It's yours whenever you want it. You and your husband both. I walked out the front door. Drove away, without looking back at the windows. My sister sent updates for the next 3 months. I read every one. I responded with 2 or 3 words. My best friend's business filed for creditor protection under the BIA. He had borrowed against projected revenue from contracts that had evaporated. A bankruptcy trustee was involved. He had to sell his truck. My fiancée was evicted from the condo they had moved into together. Without the Northvolt retainer and 2 other clients who had followed, she couldn't cover her share of the rent. She took a junior position at a print house in Surrey for not much above minimum wage. My parents listed the Burnaby house. With the HELOC called in and my father's credit in poor shape, refinancing wasn't possible. They were downsizing to a 2-bedroom condo in Coquitlam. My mother stopped going to the golf club. She had run out of things to say to her friends there. The relationship between my best friend and my former fiancé didn't survive the financial pressure. My sister told me they had separated. Somewhere in the collapse, my former fiancé had found my email address and sent me a 3-page message. A long, unraveling letter about how she understood. Now that everything she thought she was building with him had been constructed on foundations I had quietly laid, she said she had made the worst mistake of her life. She said she would leave him if I gave her any sign at all. I read it with my morning coffee. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not grief, not even the faint warmth of vindication. She was a stranger asking me to rescue her from a situation she had chosen deliberately. I forwarded the email to my best friend's address. No subject line, no message. Then I blocked them both. My sister 2 days later, he smashed her laptop. It's officially over between them. I replied with the address of a good Airbnb near my building and told her she and her husband were welcome anytime. In February, I was formally appointed regional director for the Ontario division, the youngest in the company's history at that level. The announcement came in a glass-walled boardroom downtown, with a round of applause from people I had come to genuinely respect. I had been seeing someone, a commercial lawyer I'd met at an industry event the previous October. Sharp, independent, not particularly interested in my past, and completely confident in herself. We cooked together 3 or 4 nights a week. We hiked on weekends. We talked about our work honestly, without performance. On a Saturday evening in March, we were on my balcony. The lake was still and dark and lit along the edges by the city. She was reading a case file wrapped in a wool blanket. I had a glass of rye and was watching the ferries cross. You're quiet tonight, she said, not looking up. Just thinking. About them? She knew the outline, not the full map. About cause and effect, I said. She lowered the file and looked at me directly. Any regrets? She asked. I thought about my mother at the door. My father's fist on the dining table. My best friend's voice when he realized the contracts were gone. The email sitting in my inbox from a woman who had set fire to her own lifeboat. And then asked me to swim to her. 1. I said. I regret not understanding sooner that the people who depend on you most will sometimes be the most willing to treat you like you don't matter. That's not wisdom I wanted, but I have it now. She was quiet for a moment. And the rest of it? I looked out at the lake, perfectly still. That I'd do again, I said, exactly the same way. She nodded once, as if that was the only sensible answer, and went back to her file. My phone lit up on the table, a text from my sister. Sunday dinner here next weekend? Just us three. Tommy's been practicing his one dish all month. He would never admit that. I smiled. A real one, the kind that doesn't need a witness. I'll be there, I wrote. Tell him not to overthink it. I'll know. I set the phone face down and picked up my glass. The lake was still. The city hummed steadily in the dark. Everything out here. The work, the apartment, the slow and honest thing I was building with the woman beside me, was constructed on ground I had chosen, from materials I had tested, with people who had earned their place in it. This time the only load-bearing wall was me, and I had no intention of moving.